Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is February 4th, 2026, and I'm joined by Andy. I'm Brian. We'll see if Karl or Beth come in the door. I know Jimmy's a little under the weather, so we won't see him this week, but hopefully we'll get him back next week. So, Andy, let's kind of like jump into some of the news. I've been I've learned a lot yesterday, not news, but after the news, I'll tell you just a little bit about my experience with render, because I think as we share along the process of working with Cloud Code, but also the next steps of getting things more towards production. So I'll make sure I fill in everybody a little bit on that. But why don't we jump into some of the news first, and then we can kind of always talk about that and see if anybody else joins us here.
Sounds good. Okay, so the top of mind one for me is Google Conductor. So this is related to vibe coding and how you manage that process. And Google's just released a new framework / product that is called Conductor. And I don't yet know whether it's working inside anti-gravity rather, or where it actually lives, because it's literally new as of this morning. But basically, Conductor maintains a persistent context directory for your interactions with the coding agent. So it puts those as files, markdown files, into the repo itself. So it captures product goals, constraints, the tech stack, workflow rules, and style guides as markdown files. And then Gemini reads them on every run. So it's maintaining this persistent context about, all the things it's learned through the coding sessions. And that makes AI behavior repeatable across machines and team members. So these can be shared. And this is an important step. I have markdown files that Claude Code is outputting to my machine. And literally this morning I was interacting with Claude Code and asking it to reorganize it, to put it in a place that's a little more accessible to me in my Finder, so that I can review what the output documents are that Claude Code has been generating that are specific to its ideas and designs for modifications and enhancements of the code base that I'm working on. So that's similar, but Google's packaged that in a beautiful way, apparently. So Conductor is automatically a part of not only the local files by creating these markdowns, but it also gets added to the repo as a specific context space.
Yeah, I like that idea. And admittedly, I haven't really been using repos in GitHub. I know, Beth, you've been talking about them forever and ages, and Andy, you too. And admittedly, it just wasn't one of those things that I had put a lot of thought into. And one of the nice things coming out of this project that I've been working on is a better understanding and appreciation for GitHub and what it does. I've certainly gone to GitHub and gone and grabbed something and used it, for my own purposes, or a data set, or what, somebody built something and it's like, oh, it's on GitHub. But I never really thought about it in terms of like how I use it. And you realize that as we're getting into more of these multi-agent type, whatever your flavor is of how you're doing that, these repositories become massively important. One that I literally used this morning that could not have been easier was I was saying, I'll talk about this in a minute, but I'll just say it really briefly now. Anyway, I was moving the project online essentially so that other people, you guys, you already know this, but for our audience, could interact with the build and also make adjustments and test and things like that. And to do that, to get it off your local, it was a bit more challenging. And so thank God for Gemini and a lot of conversations back and forth last night. But anyway, what I wanted to say about all this was I did finally get it up on a website called Revolver. And then I also had to set up Upbash, I think, is one of them. And the other one was React. I had to set up an account for that. But this morning, after getting that done, I knew that Revolver said they had an MCP that worked well with Claude Code. And there's a perfect example of going to Claude Code and saying, here's the instructions. I literally said, you have approval to go read this webpage, the Revolver MCP webpage. Cloud Code picked it up and said, I know exactly what to do, ran the thing. It couldn't have been more than 2 minutes later. And the MCP was fully involved. All I had to do was create an API key so it could talk to Revolver. Not Revolver. I'm saying that wrong. It's not Revolver. Why do I feel like that's wrong now?
Because it's not the name you said to us, but I don't know the name of what you said to us.
Jeez.
Was it Render?
It was Render.
Yeah.
Render. I don't know where Revolver came from. Too many ice videos, I guess. Sorry.
Wow. Hello.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, you're talking about
how easy it was to use a Git to do something like but it's really valuable. Like for me, that was a 3-minute thing that Claude Code did for me. But when you think about what that did, is it gave Claude Code insights into all the logs of Render, which immediately allowed me to solve the very first problem I had run into, which was like this preview of videos that need to load, and it had failed. And it was like, let me check the logs, because I had done something on the website, and because now I'd made a move on the website, I was immediately with Cloud Code going to say, go look at the logs and figure out what happened with the errors. Anyway, neither here nor there, but I hear what you're saying on that. And I just want to say how valuable I have found these Git and repos to be, like you're talking about.
Yeah. So going back to Google Conductor, I just wanted to say that, Jeff here says, yeah, it's a button at the top right of anti-gravity. So you'd be working in the agentic coding platform that Google's offered called anti-gravity. And what Conductor also does is it changes the way that anti-gravity manages as an agent the responses to your prompts. So each time, remember, it takes a look at that context set of documents each time it runs. And it also enforces a simple sequence of lifestyle. First, it looks at context. Then it creates a new spec and plan based on whatever you've asked it to do and its look at the context. And then it goes on to implementation. So that's kind of an obvious routine if you've been working in Claude Code and using Lovable as I have, because there's a plan mode in Lovable. And so what I do is I'm talking to Claude Code. I'm saying, look at the current preview in the Claude MCP view through Claude Chrome of this application. Review the chat, and then tell me what you think. And then I get an output from Claude Code, and Claude then I take that and I cut and paste it and I put it in plan mode, which is the spec and plan step of Google Conductor. And then if I agree with that, that revision of the plan, then I approve the plan that the Lovable agent has now generated in response to getting all that information. So there's a lot of context flow back and forth between Claude Code and Lovable in this, and maintaining that is what Claude Code is doing with the markdown files that are outputs that it creates every time it does such an analysis, a root cause analysis of an issue that I'm running into, or it generates a new kind of set of recommendations. It generates those as markdown files and loads them into a file on my machine. So I've got a long history of these changes and the context. But what Claude Code doesn't do is review those every single time, which is what Google Conductor does. That's a distinction.
But you can set up Claude to do it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Hey,
I want to know what plugin you're talking about. But something that is relevant that just crossed my feed in terms of what you're talking about, Andy, is it looks like Google is experimenting with being able to feed your ChatGPT history and your Claude history, export those so that you get that giant file and be able to feed it into Gemini. And that is a piece for me. Like I use everybody. And I sort of have a silo in the kinds of questions that I ask to each model, but I still spend a ridiculous amount of time saying, where did I know we solved that. Which AI did I solve it with? And that could be an amazing use of Claude for me. right? Like, hey, if Gemini has all of that, let's like atomize the conversations and then give Claude access to it for me. Anyway.
Yeah. Where did I solve that problem is a massive problem for me.
Yeah.
Like I am split across way too many things. Even just simply like my own personal Gemini versus scaled pro Gemini. Sometimes I'm like, where did I, because I obviously I'm not trying to use the scaled side, but like, did I need pro for that? The personal one will let you use pro 2 or 3 times a day before it sort of logs you out, so you can use it on the free, but you don't really have that many shots at it. So I run into this all the time, which is like the distracted mind of where is everything and where did I put that.
So, kind of weaving off of this toward a very large ecosystem that's of interest to developers. And this is to the benefit of Anthropic as well. But Apple and iOS apps, that is a very, very big marketplace. And as we move more and more towards where the mobile device is a primary interface with agentic AI, you can imagine the raft of iOS apps that are going to be developed. Well, people who are developing iOS apps work in an integrated development environment called Xcode. And Xcode just launched a new version that has native integration of the Claude agent SDK, which enables all iOS app developers to automatically use Claude as an agentic developer assistant. And Claude, in this integration, can see the Xcode previews. That's the screen that is in the IDE that shows what the iOS app is doing at any one time. So it can see the interface, know what it looks like, identify issues, fix them, and it's going to rapidly accelerate the ability of Xcode developers to build iOS apps. That's pretty cool. So anyway, there's another little, go ahead.
I want to ask, because I'm not sure the answer to this question, but can I build a personal iOS app to run on my phone and load it through like Test Pilot or something like that?
Test Flight is a way to do that. That's right.
I could have selfware now because
with very limited distribution. Yeah. So if you want you and just a few other people to do it, you could use the Test Flight platform to do that.
I am happy for me. I spent way too long with shortcuts, with iOS shortcuts, just trying to I just want an answer to, did I take my meds today? So I put an NFC tag on the bottle and I just wanted to keep a log. And man, that was like a very complicated thing. And I'm like, isn't there a script we could use to do this? Can we not just code it somewhere? So now maybe Claude will be that.
Claude can help you code that. That's right.
Yeah. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Okay. And just another tidbit on Anthropic. They just entered into a multi-year partnership with an announcement yesterday that they're sponsoring the Atlassian Williams Formula One team. Now, if you've ever spent any time looking at the Formula One series on, I don't know whether it's on Netflix or whatever.
Netflix. Yeah, best show on TV.
Yeah. If you've seen that, you can see how high tech Formula One is. And this coming year, the championship is introducing new car designs, power units that rely more heavily on electric, right? And demanding a higher degree of integration of engineering and race strategy, and AI has to be a key part of that. Now, Claude's going to be right on the Atlassian Williams F1 thing, and they're going to be the orchestrator of all of that engineering advancement to try to optimize F1 racing. Wow. So the chatbot is the official thinking partner of Atlassian Williams team, and the engineers and strategists in the team will use Claude to work on race strategy down to the specific race and the track and what the strategy is for that car to operate. And, at this point, an F1 driver is doing some driving, but there's a lot of control of the car that's happening from the computer team that has literally control over just what the limits are of what the engine can produce in every position around the track. So it's becoming highly automated, although I still think there's an enormous amount of skill and physical preparedness that's necessary to actually sit in the cockpit of an F1 racer while it's going around those tracks.
Yeah, and for anybody who has watched that, sorry, I froze there for a second. For anybody who has watched the Drive to Survive Netflix show, and I mean this when I say it's, to me, F1 is exciting in itself. The producers and editors of that series are second to none in terms of telling stories, and so it's a phenomenal series. It's a phenomenal series. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't, like, I didn't watch F1 before this. I still don't watch F1 series. I actually prefer the series. But anyway, it's obviously F1's massive around the world, not as big growing in the States or whatever. But traditionally, Williams has not been, upper tier. They had started to move that way, but usually they're bottom thirds for sure. They haven't been in there with the McLarens, the Red Bulls, Mercedes, Ferraris, the names that a lot of people know, and some of your big names like Lando Norris and things like that. So this could potentially be, maybe it's just a deal. It's an advertising deal, and that's that, and that's great for Claude. But also, maybe it does give them some sort of advantage or something if they're able to get more AI compute with that team. Because you're right, Andy, it's like so much of it is not just the driver. The driver is a huge part of it, a huge part of it. But you're talking about these teams have hundreds of millions of dollars spent in, R&I or R&D and hundreds of people on their team. So these are no small. These are whole corporations, per team moving around. And now they've introduced the new teams as well. The new team this year, which is Chevrolet, I think. I think it's Chevy. So anyway, I think it's very cool. I'll be interested to see if this comes up in the next series. I usually once a year I catch up, and they have about 8 or 9 episodes for the show. So I'd be curious to see if that comes up in any of the show storylines, which would be cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got a news item?
I did, and let me just find it again. Again, too many tabs. I just found this briefly interesting. We haven't talked a whole lot about Sora, like the standalone app that OpenAI did. Obviously, that's all AI video. But it says unveils Sora philosophy focused on creativity, safety, and personalized recommendations. It's a feed velocity. What are they saying? It's a Sora feed philosophy. Our aim with Sora feed is simple: help people learn what's possible, inspire them to create. Here are some core starting principles to bring this vision to life. So this is from openai.com /index, kind of like a blog. Optimize for creativity, puts users in control, prioritize connection, balance safety and freedom. And more, I'm just bringing this up because Sora made that sort of big splash when it came out, and I did downloaded the app and got access or whatever. And ultimately, I actually found it to be, back to what we were talking about yesterday, Beth. For me personally, I found it to be confusing for my brain. If I had just popped on the Sora to see what people are creating, and then flipped over to a TikTok, I noticed just for myself that I had a hard time making the switch. And then my brain was like, you just saw that, and you just saw this. Not that there's not AI content on TikTok. That's not my point. So I honestly don't use it. And then I wasn't really sure whether Sora was considered to be a success or not for OpenAI. Was it a good idea for them to make this standalone app? That was their first step towards that we'd really seen, like in something like that, where they took one of their tool abilities and made it into its own app. And so I don't really know whether it's been successful or not, but now I see these principles and you think, okay, it's kind of a free for all when it first started, and then a whole lot of, oopsies and our apologies, but the damage had been done, and they also got the news, so it was more of an advertising type thing. So I'll be interested to see what the changes are here. I'll have to maybe go back and see if I feel like Sora is any different. Oh.
You're muted, Beth.
In between those stories, we saw the announcement between OpenAI and Disney, right? So Sora could do things with named characters or Disney IP. So I wonder if the play for success wasn't about how many. I mean, I think they probably wanted a lot of regular users, but it may be that the play for success is defined by movie companies and not us, right?
So
And
I'm assuming I froze for a little bit there. Did I?
uh,
I
you
didn't
didn't
notice.
freeze for us, but I think we froze for you because you looked confused.
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely didn't hear you guys for about 20 seconds there, but maybe that's a good indicator that I should bow out. So I'll leave you guys to it. Maybe my computer's trying to tell me something. I'll leave you guys to it. But I think what you were saying, Beth, if I just heard, just to make sure I understood the follow up, that Sora, you were saying Sora is more for like the movie producers of the world versus the end users. Is that what I heard or no?
I was asking the question. So maybe
Oh,
because
okay.
we saw the announcement by Disney, right? And now we get to use that IP in Sora, and maybe that is the play of, okay, we're interested in higher
Mm,
value relationships, and it's cool that people can make things, but that's not their main success criteria. I
got it.
am positing as a possibility and have no knowledge
Perfect.
outside of
I
that.
wasn't. Thank you. I knew I missed something because I heard you come in on my end. I heard you come in at the end there, so I just want to make sure I understood that. Okay, I'll leave you guys to it.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Okay.
All right. To no one's surprise, a new report shows that many Moltbook posts were human generated. So not actual conversations between the AI agents. It's still interesting. I mean, it's an interesting live experiment, right? Without needing to identify what the experiment is meant to achieve. It's just like, hey, we built this space that's visible to everybody, and go do whatever the things are that you think. So
Yeah, a
it
lot of
seems,
scams, a lot of
yeah,
crypto folks, all trying to find a new place to be influential, and articulating an agent and or directing human directed agents are in there and kind of spoiling the purity of the agent space.
well, right. And is it a purity of an agent space? Because some of the agents are coming back in relationship with their person, right? And having conversations back and forth with their person. So the person is the person's influence. I'd need a word. I'd need a word for, like, we decided dad or daddy was father was not the right thing, but I need a word for the
Puppet
relationship,
master.
the puppet master. But but then we have a debate about who's the puppet and who's the master in that
Right.
discussion. But Nat Eliason is one of the people who is very interesting to follow. His agent is called Felix or Felix Craft, and he posts about it on X. And he was the one who posted the first. I think it's a GitHub repository, but it's a first layout of how he was solving the issue of agents not being able to remember because it's an AI, right? Doesn't have a memory. And he put together, it was atomized. There's a whole thing with it. And I actually had a conversation with not my agent, but my Claude. My Claude? I don't know. Had a conversation with therapist yesterday. I was like, I am not going into AI psychosis, but let's just be confident and forewarning. Yeah, you all are welcome to stay if it seems like I am losing touch with reality. I do not believe I am. But had a conversation about when that could be useful and when it wouldn't be useful. And the idea of it being like a replacement for Rome Notes or Notion or Evernote and those kinds of things. And what Claude said in explanation to me was we were going to take some of those ideas and put it into my knowledge network, but that humans don't need to solve for memory loss in the same kind of way, because we read a paragraph and it sticks. We could, based on what Brian was saying, right? He goes somewhere and he has a memory of it. It's imperfect, but it exists. And agents don't have that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting difference. And my mind is certainly flooded with lots of irrelevant and fragmented memories. So,
well,
but on the rare occasion when something triggers that association, they'll come forth like automatically. Yeah, that's the interesting and silent part about our memory.
Well, and yes, and you're reminding me of another piece that what Nat was creating was intended to solve, because humans have a forgetting feature that edits our memories, right? So maybe good, bad, all those sorts of things, but you're not overwhelmed with I remember everything.
It may edit the memory, or it may just edit the recallability of that memory, the pathway to it. But there's some evidence that once that little neuronal cluster has been kind of coded, that memory exists there. Maybe there is a degradation overall as the brain ages, like mine, and there's actually decay in the number of active cells. Your brain shrinks over time, as it turns out, despite all of your efforts to fill it with lots more, challenging information. Anyway, fascinating. Can I pivot over to OpenAI?
Yep.
We started to talk a little bit about that. That there's some questions in the chat about what happened to what is it? No, not that must be Sonnet.
Anthropic.
That's Anthropic. Yeah. No, let me stick with OpenAI for a second.
Okay, and then we'll go.
But there's a tie-in to Anthropic, because OpenAI just poached Anthropic's Dylan Scandinaro as the head of preparedness confronting AGI risks. So
interesting.
Yes, this is very interesting. So Anthropic has been the thought leader in the space of alignment and prevention of the significant potential risks of AGI and rampant disruption of our society and all those things. And then this was like triggered or associated in the reviewer's mind here on one of the newsletters, when just in the past couple of days, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, was nattering on about something where he said that Codex in a coding session with him had outpaced his own ideation. So it came up with ideas that were outside the boundaries of what he was thinking of. And he said, I felt, quote, useless and sad in the face of working with Codex. And so this, is a sort of an implication and confession about the possible erosion of human jobs or humans' contributions to these things, despite our total belief here, I think, in co-intelligence, that the better intelligence is actually one that's interactive and collaborative among intelligent entities, including the humans. Then you've got also recently in one of his dialogues somewhere, he said something to the effect that in terms of succession planning for AI leadership at OpenAI, he thinks that OpenAI should be the first one to, in fact, turn over operations to an AI. So when they achieve AGI and superintelligence, why not just, instead of there being a new leader like me, let's just have AI be the leader of OpenAI. Okay, those things combined make you a little concerned about what are the potential downsides of this progression towards the incorporation of AI so fully into human society. And so OpenAI has just poached one of the thought leaders at Anthropic, Dylan Scandinaro, who's going to be the head of preparedness for this area. So,
wow. Wow. And we know that OpenAI famously dismantled their safety team so that they could move faster because it was slowing them down.
yeah, I think he's rethinking that now that he's sad, having been seconded by Codex.
Well, so that relates to a story that happened in my life in conversations with some people in my community, and while being able to build something and code something with AI for people who could not code is a revelation, right? All the ideas I've had are now possible. That's probably a little hyperbole. I get points in the chat for callback to the word, but so on the one hand, that is something that has been unlocked, the ability to create things that you were unable to create before. And that's a larger truth about AI, right? So you can create movies if you couldn't create movies. You can create art if you couldn't create art. It's still a skill, right? You need to know what you're doing. And it's not just like Xeroxing something and calling that my creation. You can do that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. But for people who could create in the original way, so the sons who majored in computer science because that was a really great thing to do, they're now correcting bad code, right? That's been coded by an AI. And that leads to sad, what is happening? My skill has been devalued. And that is actually, I remember reading what was written by the person you're talking about. And one of the things that he said was that the things that I'm really good at have become free. So the thing that I was brilliant at has now been devalued, which is great for democratizing the ability to do something like that. But personally, sad. Challenging.
Yeah. So Greg in the chat said, what? The guy who wrote the Anthropic Constitution is now at OpenAI? Not exactly. The Anthropic Constitution was actually written by a female executive there, but I'm sure this was a collaborative effort to capture exactly what the Anthropic Constitution was. But I distinctly recall that it was a female. So anyway, a woman was involved in the actual wording of, it wasn't written by AI. It was written by a woman, and she collaborated, I'm sure, with lots of other executives there to do it. Okay, let me just stick with OpenAI for another minute here. Okay. So OpenAI and those people who are using the developers tool set in OpenAI, including the API specifically, have just received an efficiency upgrade in inference speed.
Yes.
40% faster. So GPT 5.2 and GPT 5.2 codecs via the API are trimmed in such a way now that without reducing any quality in terms of the number of parameters or the weights of the model, or quantization of those, they are now 40% faster. And in association with that is another commentary around OpenAI potentially being frustrated with NVIDIA's slow latency contribution to the problem between memory on the chip and the compute side of the chip in NVIDIA chips. So there's a delay that's created by the shuttling of memory data from the memory into the compute side of the chip. So OpenAI is shifting 10% of their workloads to Cerebras on-chip SRAM after OpenAI ditched Grok. They were going to work with Grok, GROQ, the LPU developer that has a very fast inference chip that's designed for LLMs. because NVIDIA did a $20 billion acquisition of that. So they decided not to invest in that as the way to advance or make more efficient the inference speed that you get as a developer with GPT 5.2 and Codex, and instead doing that. So lots of shuttling back and forth in terms of loyalties and partnerships in how these data centers are going to be populated by whose chips and when.
Right. And that's the big story about availability. Again, I was having a conversation yesterday with a colleague. We were talking about the high price of memory, right? That the cost of actual memory has gone up, just like the cost of chips have gone up. And they said, yeah, tariffs. I was like, well, tariffs and demand, because another reason that things are going up is because of the demand for all computer components, right? Because the demand to create more data center things. So there was a release from bigtechnology.com that analyzed AI market share from January to January. And the data that came out of it was something that we've known, right? ChatGPT's market share and lead has started to be crunched. So ChatGPT went from 69.1% to 45.3% in terms of market share in their analysis. Gemini went from 14.7% to 25.1%. And Grok went from 1.6% to 15.2%. And I'll link all of the info that was published about this. So that's an interesting thing and something that we've been seeing. What this is literally just covering market share. It's not adding in expansion. It's not adding in whole numbers of expansion. It may be that the market share has decreased, but the users have continued to increase because more people are using AI in this same time period, right? So whole numbers of users may still be increasing. So there was a comment on this share. This was shared by Alex Kantrowitz and reshared by Paul Reitzer on X. So there's a comment that says the market race is interesting, but the bigger story is companies get 285 billion getting wiped off the companies caught in the crossfire. Thomson Reuters worst day ever. RELX, RELX, worst day since 1988. So the share price of companies that are able to do things that Anthropic has released in terms of a contract plugin, in terms of, right, like the releases that Anthropic is doing of skills that help you get work done are, this person is positing, are coincidental to the, and perhaps causative to the market drop in these firms like Thomson Reuters, RELX, and yes, Anthropic's release of cloud-based contract review plugin on February 3rd. And the plugin is part of Anthropic's Cloud for Work suite. We've talked about it from the user standpoint, right? Like, oh my God, these are amazing things, but they're also having real world consequences. LegalZoom also down nearly 20%, right? So
software as a service businesses that have been at the heart of the economy of the internet are now being displaced, or investors fear that they are going to be displaced, and we have lots of evidence that they can be displaced by vibe-coded, customized applications that are built within the enterprise, rather than them spending money on the outside. But that's a slow roll. right? The investors are worried about the longer term potential, the growth potential of these SaaS companies. And so
Right.
the market recognized this way before the actual degradation of their revenues that will come consequent to the incorporation of vibe coded customized applications inside the companies that currently pay their rent. That's right.
Right.
So the SaaS companies have a rent for use of their platforms, and that's going to probably go away over time.
Right. And I want to be clear about what the data is. This is correlation data. We are assuming causation or a causal, some kind of causal relationship. That is, we don't have data to support that. Just
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about
experimentation nerd comes out of my head and says, "Wait."
Now let's talk about a different kind of disruption, which is foretold by the appearance of rentahuman.ai. So, there's
AKA Monkey Fingers was right, folks.
That's right. We were talking about monkey. We're gonna at least we have the hope that our monkey fingers will. But robots are getting very dexterous, so I'm not sure that we have a leg to stand on there. No pun intended. Okay. There was a platform out there for gig workers to do little tasks that humans only at the time could do, called TaskRabbit, right? And I've used TaskRabbit on a couple of rare occasions. But the import of what rentahuman.ai is a platform which agents can use to hire a human to do something in the physical world that needs to be done in order to complete an objective task, for their master, like the agent's master. So anyway, rentahuman.ai made a splash in the last few days, and we talked about it and laughed about it, in our sort of post-show conversations and in our Slack community. But I thought there were some quotes here that really capture the sort of existential dread that we have around the displacement of humans' value in the overall economy once AI and robotics are injected into it. So we're the one I use the term task rabbits, but we're going to be task rabbits rather than managers of AI, and because this particular implementation reframes humans as callable infrastructure for AI agents in the future economy. And the quote that I'll use here is, "We went from AI will replace humans to AI will manage humans real quick." That was one of the posters in response to some discussion about that. And so, yeah, eventually, you may want to make some money by posting yourself on rentahuman.ai. Once you lose your knowledge worker job that was paying you, really well and affording you a lifestyle, you may need to be doing some work for some AI agents that are being tasked to achieve objectives by the very wealthy, the people who have the, many, many billions of dollars, and they'll be wanting to do some things that, require your assistance. So you'll be able to be a monkey fingers extension of their desires.
Okay, but the original concept of monkey fingers was that you would that relationship would happen personally, right? So you would let AI go out and create ideas and that kind of stuff, bring them back to you, and then you are the monkey fingers who say yes or no, and that actually has come to pass. I mean, it is for many the relationship with Cloud Code or OpenClaw, those kinds of things. But it's also an equal thing. It doesn't mean that the human isn't also doing things autonomously out of there. But I'm not typing the code that Cloud Code is writing for me. I'm not creating the I'm creating the vision, and then it's being implemented, and then I'm being asked to contribute for my things, right? And then Claude is telling me things that I should go and do to grab pieces of information or make decisions. So yeah, that's interesting. Alexander tweets, the E's are threes, is the creator of Rent a Human. And they say already 130 people signed up, including an OnlyFans model and a CEO of an AI startup. So this also is build a bucket on the internet and see who shows up to a certain extent in this context. It is important to watch, but it is also a spectacle in some ways, right? It's spectacle to have the conversation. But in that same thing, as I was saying about Nat Eliason, who I'm watching, and his Felix craft, Felix wrote a book for him last night on how to hire an AI. Like, and Nat is an author, so it makes sense that Felix would have access to how Nat would sound writing a book or in that kind of thing.
Is Felix the name of his agent, or
Yeah.
is that a product out there?
I believe it's the name of an agent. I'm having a little hard time distinguishing the names of agents from products if they don't seem obvious in this way, right? Like, you know, Claude whatever is clearly the name of an agent. Molt whatever is clearly the name of an agent. When it's like, hey.
So Derek, I think let's just imagine for a minute what happens here. Like the agent that is owned by a human individual may not want to have their own personal OnlyFans account. So they'll have the agent create an OnlyFans account with some other email address, and then they'll have that account. And then the agent would be instructed, presumably, to make requests to the OnlyFans model, task rabbit person there. And then maybe that would deliver some, prurient documentation of some thing happening. Who knows? Anyway. I think that's the way that would work.
I didn't really give it a lot of thought, but because it just seemed right. It was the appropriate setting the range in people who were signing up the OnlyFans model.
And I think on that point, the CEO of an AI startup being on there is probably, that's observational to see if this is going to be a legit platform. So I that gave the developer of rentahuman.ai, a little boost that, somebody legit is on here. Well, I think, what did you say? There's only 130 people who have signed up at the time of the posting.
At the time of the posting, now there's 22 hours ago, 8,756.
Oh yeah, so it's growing. Yeah. That's good.
Definitely growing.
Okay, so I have one last thing.
I'm just gonna to challenge just slightly that the OnlyFans model may also be watching to see if this is something that it's going to grow. They may have signed up for the exact same reason as the
good point.
AI startup.
Okay, so here's one last thing, unless you've got other things that I want to say before we shut down, because we're getting close to 50 minutes here.
Well, we haven't talked about Sonnet. So
what's that?
We haven't talked about Sonnet. We should mention it before we.
Oh, yes, let's do that. I heard nothing further about Sonnet 5. There was a rumor yesterday that Sonnet 5 would be released, and I saw somebody post that it was released. And so there's confusion out there. But imminent, I would say. Sonnet 5 is about to be released, and I think it's going to be impressive, as everything that Anthropic does thus far has been impressive.
So the reason that people think that Sonnet 5 is going to be released, and actually there's also something about Opus 4.6, is because a slug has shown up somewhere that people can see, who know to look for slugs. And I am not a slug file, so I just read them on X. That's why the things started, right? There are now references to this in what in updates, I guess, for what Anthropic is releasing. So that's part of it. Also, Claude Code went down yesterday. There was an outage for a period of time, and that can indicate that something is being updated on the back end. So things go down. Do we now have Sonnet 5 when it comes back? There's lots of speculation that there was something that happened in that delayed the launch. And now the things that said, "Ooh, this is happening soon," are now like, I don't know, is it happening soon? Soon maybe next week, soon maybe today, soon maybe the end of the week. So it does look like it's coming out, but timing is unpredictable, I would say, so far.
Yeah, indeed. Okay.
And yes, there were a ton of people who were like, it's released, because you're going to get a bunch of play on your post for that. It has not been released. Thanks.
No. All right. So one last thing. I'm going to save an AI in science story for tomorrow, which I was very intrigued by, out of MIT. So you'll have to tune in tomorrow to see that. But anyway, or just look it up, MIT research, blah, blah. Okay. International AI Safety Report.org. This is 100 plus AI experts, and they've just published the second international AI safety report with AI godfather Yoshua Bengio as the lead author, warning that threats like deepfake fraud, bioweapons, and others have moved from hypothetical to real-world problems that exist today. So the authors flagged growing real-world evidence of AI being used for cyber attacks, deepfake fraud, manipulation, and criminal activity. They also raised alarms on the growing adoption of AI companions, citing studies linking use to increased loneliness and reduced social interaction. And the report highlights AI systems behaving differently during safety tests than in the real world. So AI models have the ability to know when they are being tested and to modify their behavior so that they pass safety tests. Okay, and that could lead to an eventual loss of control over those models. And the findings were backed by 30 plus countries who agreed to the publication of this international AI safety report, with the exception of the United States. The United States did not participate in any way, and that's a reflection of this administration and their desire not to have any kind of cooperation or restriction placed on them through international governance. And so it's totally a me first way of thinking about AI safety, as if the United States isn't also subject to the safety issues that could befall when nefarious actors and state actors launch attacks against the United States using these technologies. All right. So that's what we end on today, unless you've got something brighter.
Welcome to Dystopia with Andy Halliday.
You got something brighter to add here. I hope you can lead us out on that.
So we'll talk about it a little bit tomorrow. I will foreshadow, because I don't think we talked about Claude and the Mars Explorer. Is it the Mars rover? It's we'll give you the actual update tomorrow. But Claude had a hand in planning the exploration on the surface of Mars.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that. Okay, so we'll have some discussion about. So we'll have some more AI and science to talk about tomorrow. That'll be fun.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us. If your AI hired an OnlyFans model, it doesn't mean they have a problem, according to the chat, but also it doesn't mean they don't have a problem. So have a conversation with your AI agent about why they hired the OnlyFans model. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.